Hey folks, it's Professor Diffley. This is History 110. This is a video 2 for lecture video 2 for the Age of Jackson unit. So where we left off last time, we had just talked about the popularity of politicians, how many people were taking part. Now we're going to start with the spoils system. So the spoils system was the concept. This is well before, first off, no civil service existed, a system the way we have it today, where it's supposed to be based on merit, there are exams to get into it, that sort of thing. At this point, and it's going to continue for a while in American history from this point on, the spoils system allowed new administrations to come in and put in its own appointees and even just bureaucrats in that. Essentially, the idea was if you won the government, the spoils, the jobs, were yours to give out. This was the idea of patronage, right? So you buy people's votes and loyalty by jobs, that sort of thing. There's no qualifications in order to get the jobs, right? Is just loyalty is the only true qualification, which isn't really a qualification. And this allows them to really just help their friends and supporters. It's a very corrupt system. There's no other way going, but it's the idea of to the victors to belong the spoils, right? You want it, you get to keep everything. This is a problem. I mean, it really is at this point. In this cartoon depicts it here. Representatives used to give jobs to only their supporters and a job broker. Again, people are going to use this to enrich themselves. Others, this is how political machines are built. And this will go on well into the 20th century. Some would argue it still continues today. And so let's look at the two parties here. Again, major issues of the day between the Democrats and the Whigs. The bank issues, tariffs, currency issues, whether or not to fund internal improvements, and as always, as we're going to be looking into closer to the Civil War era, balance of power between national and state authority, right? Who should be truly in power? The Democrats here they wanted to slow down the gap between the social and economic classes there, and this is they were warned against what they called non-producers. So there were producers and consumers and non-producers, that consumers, non-producers class. These were bankers, merchants, speculators, all those that didn't really produce anything, didn't work with their hands, didn't work with their minds in the sense of creating something. They're just making money off of especially interest, rents, that sort of thing. And so they really, people looked at them as almost like parasites on society. Many did. They were against government interference with the marketplace. Right, they don't want too many tariffs. They want the government to, not really set much policy. Free market advocates. Membership at this point, young businessmen, farmers, urban workers, and artisans. In the South, this is going to be true until the Civil War. Democrats were usually the slave owners. And so what you're actually going to have is two different types of Democratic Party up to the Civil War. In the South, you have a one-party system, which at this point is only Democratic, the Democratic Party, very different from the party in the North. The party in the North was more geared towards the working class, urban issues, things like that. It is odd that they worked together here, but they were very much a different party in each area. And this also shows where the symbol came from. For them. The Whigs, this is again from the English political party that was anti-monarchy, at least the name. And why they do that? Again, because this is the concept that this is King Andrew, right? That Andrew Jackson was acting like a king. They supported the American system, government intervention, funding roads and really building up the economy. Strong support in the Northeast. That makes sense. This is where the Industrial Revolution is occurring in that area. And these were usually the upper classes here. But even here you see the Democrats, when we say they had some roads in the South, at this point it's also the large Southern planters. This was more the upper class political party here. And this is just, you could see some of the images here, political parties, that sort of. Public and private freedom, Democrats were private. Really believe that individual were private entitlements protected by local governments and were threatened by national authority. So again, they are more in favor of small national government, really states' rights kind of thing. The Whigs, again, remember I said they're upper class. They really did believe that society is a hierarchy. Class mobility is possible, but they tended to believe that things should be left to the upper classes. Defer. They believed in government intervention in private lives and ensure people acted as free moral agents. Essentially, they want to really legislate morality. That's the point. And so that's why they're going to push for government schools, temperance laws, Sabbath laws. Working on the day you're supposed to go pray, that sort of thing. Definitely differences in the two of them here. But as I mentioned, states' rights, that's about to rear its ugly head, this issue, in the sense of this is what's going to lead to the Civil War in many ways. What comes around here, this issue, is nullification, and it is led by John C. Calhoun, vice president for Jackson. Really is a supporter of states' rights nullification. What it was is that the South did not like, and South Carolina did not like, federal tariffs. Tariffs are taxes on imported goods. They didn't like this. Why? Because the South had very little manufacturing and won't have for a while. So they are heavily reliant on foreign goods at this point. Finished goods. And so South Carolina says it hurts us, and so we don't have to follow this law. We're going to nullify it, right? In other words, unilaterally deem the law null and void. So what they're saying is if South Carolina doesn't like what the feds are doing, they don't have to follow along. This is going to be a problem later because the idea is that we need a national economic policy to prevent states fighting each other. Is that states can do things differently in terms of some of their laws, but nationally, economically, we jump together as a nation. The idea to create this national policy. States can't create foreign trade. We want it all uniform in this sense. And so this is the beginning of this. In many ways, now, why is this such a big deal? Again, they're trying to say especially South Carolina, that they don't have to listen to the federal government. The federal government doesn't have authority over them, that sort of thing. But this intensifies sectionalism. And again, this is what South Carolina is going to be the first to secede from the Union around the Civil War. Again, they're saying that they don't have to listen to any of these. This is the big deal. President Andrew Jackson responds with the Force Act. He threatens to use the Army to collect the taxes, Army and Navy, saying, again, federal law is supreme, and that had been established for a while. And he's arguing this is nothing short of this is nothing short of disunion. This is almost. It's sedition in many ways. And this is, again, saying that President Jackson will use military force and possible civil war to enforce the supremacy of federal law, keep the Union together. And so you'll see this, Calhoun abandoned the Democrats as a result and switched to the Whigs because he doesn't like what's going on. And they became a formal political trio. Based on their opposition to Andrew Jackson. Now, this is very important because later in the Civil War, when we get to Civil War, the South is going to say it's not about slavery, it's about states' rights. Not true. It's about states' rights to keep slavery, because if it was truly just about the states' rights to do as they pleased, they would have seceded here. But we'll see that as we get forward later in the class. The other thing, let's return to Andrew Jackson here. One of the things that's really a darker mark on his legacy is the Indian removal. This was the final act against the Native Americans east of the Mississippi, and this will finish, moving them off their lands up and down the East Coast. It allowed for negotiations to obtain Native American land, and in exchange for removal to Mississippi, west of the Mississippi in today's what is today Oklahoma. Interestingly, a lot of natives were put into Oklahoma to only be later pushed off the land again once they found oil underneath there. Natives refused to negotiate because they did not want to leave their lands, as you could understand, I believe. And so they were forced forced removal, which becomes known as the Trail of Tears, because it's how many people were forced marched and died from the Cherokee, specifically here. In this issue. But so by 1840s, virtually all Native American nations had been removed from the East Coast and begin to put on reservations or just thrown out into the West there. Here you can see the Trail of Tears, a depiction from this is actually from the Cherokee here. They were taken from their homes, incarcerated in stockades, essentially concentration camps, forced to walk more than 1,000 miles, not really given much food, medicine, or help. And more than 4,000 died, and they were buried in unmarked graves, and it was the trail where they cried, and that's how it becomes the Trail of Tears there. But as you can see, here's the Indian removals, 1830s, 1840s, again, move them into what eventually becomes Oklahoma, and then other territories, only to find out they're going to move them from there once they have oil as well. But almost all this is forced marches. The Creek, Chickasaw, Choctaw, Cherokee, and Sauk, Fox, all these others are going to be forced off their land, continuing what have become. Sequoyah was the leader of the Cherokee. One of the interesting things about the Cherokees, they were viewed as a civilized tribe. That's what they called them, because they had some owned slaves in some areas, but they had a constitution, government, had begun to create a language, written language based on English and that. But the problem was that their refusal to move for them. But many tried to hide out from them. Here's just some more images from all of this. So one of the things Jackson and the Bank of the United States, this is dealt with in the Age of Jackson video. But what this is really about is the bank war. Jackson opposes the banks and views it as a threat to his presidency. He doesn't want a national bank. Others do, because they say, like other countries, England, France, the Dutch, all of them have central banks better able to create a uniform currency. At this point, you don't really have a uniform currency. Banks can issue money their own, so you don't have dollar bills in the sense that we would have today. But why is this important? This bank war, part of it is Jackson begins to use the veto power of the presidency, and he begins to try to go around Congress to get what he wants. This goes even further in the pet banks and the economy, the Panic of 1837. More economic troubles with speculation or just panics over the economy. There's more about Martin Van Buren here. You can see it in the notes. Just a little information here for him. It's really what you need to know. Again, it is really right here. And what is that? Bold. Couldn't think of that word there. Sorry, really. But this separates the national government from banking, right? So eventually, even today, we have the Treasury, which is a quasi a government party, a government institution. We're just about at the end here. Eventually, you're going to have the election in 1840, and you're going to get William Henry Harrison. Harrison's the log cabin candidate. This is the sense that it tries to play up his, as you can see here, his common man image, right? He drank cider. He grew up in a log cabin, like regular people. That's the idea. John Tyler becomes his VP. What's interesting here, what we need to know about William Henry Harrison, is he dies real quickly in office, and Tyler becomes vice president. He gets just pneumonia and that. And so this shows you just the where the party is split in between the Whigs and the Democrats here, and just gives you a little bit more of how the country is beginning to split in votes there. So that is really it for this unit. Again, make sure you watch the required videos. Take a look at the notes throughout, and let me know if you have any questions. All right, thanks, folks.